Spectre Vision Radio.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astro-scientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
I'm Ryan Sprague, and you are now somewhere in the skies. Welcome to Somewhere in the Skies. I am your host, Ryan Sprague, and we have a very special episode for you guys this week. We don't do this often, but I couldn't think of a better team to have this fascinating discussion. We're doing a crossover episode with the Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs podcast, hosted by Jordan, Tom, and Mallory. Now, technically, I was the guest on their show, but afterwards, we decided that we should drop this on both of our main feeds, since we're both Spectre Vision radio shows. So I am so honored to be their neighbor over at Spectre Vision, and I was just so honored to be one of their guests on their show. We talked about so many different things, from birthing myths to the mysterious and depressing Squonk. Yeah, you guys ever heard of the Squonk? Well, you will in just a few minutes. We talked about the UAP hearings, the Hellfire missile, UFO video, aliens, ghosts, you name it. We talked all about it. It was a fascinating discussion. You can hear it right now over at Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, or you can listen to it right now on Somewhere in the Skies. But I cannot recommend their show enough. Make sure you go subscribe to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And the same goes for us. Please take just a few moments to rate and review Somewhere in the Skies on Apple Podcasts, or leave us a rating on Spotify as well. Wherever you get the show, those ratings and reviews go a very, very long way. So thank you to all past, present, and future ratings and reviews. We truly do appreciate it. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, and all the links for everything is in the show notes, including a link to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs. So let's get to it. Keep looking up.
My name is Jordan, and today I am not only joined by my attractive, indomitable co-hosts Tom and Mallory, we've also got Ryan Sprague with us here today.
Yay!
Hello, Ryan.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me. I've been a listener for a while now, and it's a true honor to be here, so thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Ryan, for anyone who doesn't know of him, is a prominent UFO investigator, a best-selling author, and a fellow podcast host in the Spectre Vision radio neighborhood. His book, Somewhere in the Skies, A Human Approach to the UFO Phenomenon, reached number 1 on Amazon, and his podcast by the same name has spent time at the top of Apple's charts. And now, Ryan, we're thrilled to finally welcome you as a guest on the biggest podcast in the universe, which we know has been your North Star goal all along.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw the title of your show, I knew I was going to become a fan. It's perfect. It's perfect.
We just really tried to keep it very tight and focused, not
Nice
cast
and
too wide a net.
So humble.
Yeah.
Ryan, can you tell us a little bit more about the genesis of Ryan Sprague?
Oh, yes. So when two parents love each other very
Oh my gosh, I'm ready. I don't know anything
Sounds
about
like
it.
Sounds like a 70s concept record.
No, sorry, Mallory. I had to. I'm originally from Syracuse, New York, born and raised. I was a baseball player for most of my life. Actually, thought I was going to go pro, play for the Mets or the Yankees or the Blue Jays. My life was kind of heading that way. I played up until college when I got injured, actually. I ended up taking up theater in college instead, to my father's dismay, but he came around eventually. But I grew a love for the arts after that, an appreciation for it, and I actually became an actor and playwright. And that led me to moving to New York City and kind of doing the whole cliche starving artist thing. And I spent years auditioning and producing, writing plays. And yeah, that was kind of that part of my life. But when I was actually 12 is when I got interested in UFOs, 12 years old. And I had a UFO sighting with my father. Very sort of dramatic experience for me personally, and kind of led me on this splinter path of my life where I became a UFO researcher. I actually interviewed my first UFO witness 1 year later when I was 13 years old. And that's kind of where my UFO investigatory work kind of started 1 year after my own, what I call an initiation, when I had my own UFO sighting. So yeah, a lot of different kind of ways that my life went, but I found ways to bring them together and converge all of my passions, and that's led me to where I am today, talking to you guys. So yeah, that's the express route, I guess.
Can you give us a brief description of what you saw with your dad?
It was 1995. We were in central New York, and I was fishing off a dock off of the St. Lawrence River. It was turning dark that night, so I reeled my line in, and when I'm reeling my line in from fishing, I see 3 white lights in the water. Like, what is that? So I start leaning over the dock and looking in the water, and then I realize it was a reflection. So I flip over on my back, and I'm looking up at this huge triangle, just a perfect equilateral triangle, 1 white light on each point of the triangle, and 1 kind of hazy orange reddish ball in the middle. And I just laid on my back staring up at this thing. It made no noise. All I could hear was the water hitting the dock at that point. And I just watched it float over me. It was huge, the formation. I didn't see like a craft, I guess, a machinery of any kind, but I couldn't see anything behind it. Stars, the moon, nothing like that. And it terrified me. So I got like a little kind of prepubescent squeal out, and my dad comes running out of this motel that we were staying at the time in the summer. And he thought I fell in the water. So he just bolts down to the dock, and he sees me laying there looking up at the sky, and he looked up too, and he saw it. And we both just stood there watching this triangle for like, I don't know, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. When these things happen, like time is the last thing.
Right.
I feel on your mind.
2 minutes is 15 seconds, or
An
like,
hour.
did you?
Yeah.
You talk about being afraid, which is perfectly understandable. But I wonder, did you have any sort of associated thoughts or feelings witnessing this craft that may have been in collaboration with the craft?
I didn't have any sort of download or sort of anything like that, or I didn't have a communion with this thing of any sort, communication. However, I went through every emotion in the span of those few minutes. I was scared. I was excited. I got really emotional at one point, I remember, almost like I felt like I wanted to cry looking at this thing. I started laughing for like half a second because of how ridiculous and weird it was. And my dad is freaking out too. He's just like looking up at this thing, shaking his head. And I keep going, what is it? What is it? And when your father cannot tell you what it is you're looking at, that's when I got really scared.
You're 12.
Yeah, so that unsettled me once again. And then, oh my God, man, it was just every spectrum of the emotional rainbow within the span of those 2 minutes. But yeah.
I feel like you had the most human reaction possible. The most human reaction to something like that, which is so unknown and potentially threatening, but also wondrous. And just, I mean, if I didn't already believe you, hearing you talk about your experience would make me believe you because of the authenticity of your reaction to it. And I also think we're going to be coming back to that particular kind of craft and that subject.
Yeah, it's a pretty good primer. Ryan, before we get into the sort of topics today, I want to give you an opportunity to plug your conference, because I know from the listening data that only about half of our audience makes it to the end. So I want our whole audience to hear your plug.
Oh my gosh. That's very kind of you. Yes, ever since I started the podcast, I've been wanting to, and I speak at conferences. I've volunteered at them for decades at this point. The big ones, the Contact in the Deserts, the UFO Congress, stuff like that. and I wanted to see if I could just do one. So 3 years ago, I reached out to a couple friends and colleagues and said, hey, you want to give a presentation at a virtual conference? It'll be just like we're doing today. Just two rectangles talking to one another, or in this case, just one rectangle. And I had so many people that wanted to do it. I was so honored. I think we had something like 35 speakers at the first one. And I somehow pulled it off, producing this entire 2-day virtual conference on my own. It has grown every year. We're going on to our 3rd year now. I have scaled it back tremendously. But yes, it's called Anomacon.
Oh, that's
aptly titled.
That's a great name.
Yeah, after anomalous, and yeah, I just thought it would be a good way to bring these communities together. UFOs, ghosts, the paranormal, supernatural, cryptids, because at the end of the day, if you zoom out far enough, I do truly feel that all of these anomalous things are somehow intrinsically linked, and that's what I wanted to do with Anomacon. So thank you. I appreciate you giving me the time. It's going to be September 20th, and it's free online, right on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, just somewhere in the skies. And we've got something like 15 speakers this year talking about everything, like I said. Ghosts, incredible. Conspiracies, UFOs, sea monsters, even. It's going to be a good time.
Man.
Good time.
Yeah.
I'm hearing no excuses. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing no excuses.
Yeah.
We'll put a link in the show notes, so
yep.
No one has any excuse not to show up. Well, Ryan, with you here, this is the perfect time for us to finally dive into the most recent UAP Congressional Hearings, which were just last week. But as I was prepping for this episode, I could have sworn they were a month ago. something, time isn't real. Anyway, also, Ryan, you told me there's a pretty meaningful overlap between some of the biggest headlines from those hearings and your own personal history with UFOs, which we heard part of just barely. So obviously I'm dying to hear more of that. But first, Mal's got a story that I'm pretty sure came out of a Dr. Seuss book.
Okay. Am I the only person who didn't know what a squonk was before this weekend?
I mean, the only person in what group? The whole world? I suspect no.
Did all three of you already know what a squonk was? This is my first time hearing about
Definitely
squonk.
not. Definitely not.
I have heard the Steely Dan song, Any Major Dude.
Yeah.
And that word just always sounded like gibberish to me, and I assumed that Steely Dan made it up. A squonk, for the listeners who might not know, like I didn't know, is a cryptid. Basically, it comes out of lumberjack lore in Pennsylvania. It's said to live in the wild hemlock forests of Pennsylvania. Basically, you take a pig and you trim it down a little bit and you give it skinnier legs, longer legs, and you take away the pig face and you give it like this grumpy cat/person and then give it loose, leathery, baggy skin covered in warts.
I do not like this creature. I do not.
This creature doesn't like itself. It's like the thing that the squonk is so famous for is for weeping and wailing in the woods because it's so ugly.
That is so
It's
sad.
so sad all the time.
My first question.
Yes.
And I know I'm
great.
sure you've got more to say to us.
Sure.
But my first
I
question
did a
is,
lot of research, actually, as much as one can.
My first question is, how would people know that's why it's weeping? Did they just put two and two together? Like, oh well, it's so ugly and it's crying. It must be because it is ugly.
You know, based on everything that I've read, I didn't get anything about the squonk speaking, so it must be an intuition. They must be a type of intuition that someone would have with the squonk.
You can just tell by the tenor and tone of the wails. That is a self-pitying cry.
It's like how a mother knows when a baby's crying because it's hungry, or when it's, I can tell it's a self-hatred wail. I know a self-hatred wail when I hear one.
I've made that same sound myself.
Yeah.
I'm imagining it with a hand mirror in front of itself all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so the most fascinating thing about the squonk to me is, well, first of all, I tried to look up any actual accounts of people seeing the squonk.
Right. That was my question.
Couldn't find any. But the fascinating thing is how many people have latched onto it over the course of time since it was first introduced in a book called Fearsome Creatures of the Underwood, written by William T. Cox in 1910. Then after that, in 1937, it appeared in the Tales of Paul Bunyan and His Great Blue Ox. They talked about catching it in a bag, and this is part of the Squonk lore. It will dissolve into tears. So they caught the Squonk in a bag, and then they were so excited to show people, and they open up the bag, and it's just full of tears. And, it's Paul Bunyan, it's fictional. But it showed up 2 years later in Henry Tryon's book called Fearsome Critters. And he also shared another detail about the Squonk that I find just delicious. With time, it developed webbing between its toes, but only on the submerged left feet. Hence, on entering the water, it could swim only in circles and never get back to shore. Fossil bones dredged from these lake bottoms reveal that thousands perished of starvation in this manner. It's like, and then we
wait. So they're claiming fossilized evidence of thousands of dead squonks.
Yes. In these books that I'm assuming were written for adventurous little boys in the 30s, right? Like that's what I'm getting from the Tales of the Squonk. That it was fun to talk about the creepy eepies in the woods, but for some reason we needed this. Like so many cryptids are actually quite fearsome. Like we're afraid they're going to drink our blood or steal our children. But this is something else. Like this is something else entirely. And people seem to really like it. It shows up in 3 books and then 2 very famous songs, Steely Dan and Major Dude.
Have you ever seen a squonk's tears? Well, look at mine.
And then also in 1976, 2 years later, a Genesis song by Phil Collins called Tears from Falling. The trail they leave is very clear for all to see at night. All to see at night. Because apparently that's how you hunt a squonk, is by following the trail of tears. Then the last thing that is very, very, this is why the article was written that I read this weekend. There's a town in Pennsylvania called Johnstown that is now throwing next year will be its 4th annual Squonkapalooza, which is essentially an all-ages cryptid festival celebrating the squonk and other creatures of Appalachian and Americana folklore and cryptozoology. And there's a squonk mascot, and you need to look at the picture of this squonk mascot hugging a child. It's the best thing I've ever seen. But yeah, my take is that I think that we like this cryptid the way we like listening to a sad song in the car and crying. Like a lot of cryptids activate a sense of wonder or even a sense of fear that's almost kind of exciting because it implies that there's more mystery and kind of enchantment in the universe. But this one seems to activate our compassion and possibly some kind of bullying. I'm not sure.
I'm feeling a little bit like a bully right now.
I know.
I'm better than the squonk. Oh, that ugly squonk in the woods. At least I'm not a squonk. Like, there's got to be, it's just a very different emotion that it activates.
I immediately thought of that cartoon Chowder. Did you guys ever watch Chowder when it was on? It was terrific. And there was a character on there called the Cinnamini Monster. He wasn't weeping like the squonk, but he was unattractive and sort of permanently unhappy. Here, I'll show you a picture of him here now. There he is. He can't,
Aww.
And he sighs a lot.
Where am I? The monster!
He sighs a lot. I want the squonk's tears to be like, I often wonder, like, what is a legitimate cryptid and what is a mythic creature? Right?
Right.
Like a quote-unquote legitimate cryptid is something that could be an animal, a Bigfoot or the Ogopogo. Could be a giant eel. I don't know. But we're pretty sure squonks aren't, having squonk families and eating berries or what, They seem more mythic to me, which is great.
There's definitely crossover in the Venn diagram between like folkloric and cryptid. And, there's the spectrum of like concern too. So on one end you have the squonk who's like, no one really cares if the squonk is real. He's like doing all the things he needs to do by just being the folklore. And then all the way on the other side, you have creatures who are tantalizingly close to being proven. They exist. You have like actual zoologists out there like looking for, like devoting their careers to looking for one specific or whatever. But yeah, the squonk seems to be like very purely a folkloric instinct. It's like a much funnier version of like the quote-unquote snipe, which I was a Boy Scout. I was told when I was very young that there were snipes out there, and I believed it. I didn't know what they were. Nobody knew what they were. And then they canonized the snipes in the movie Up, when he tells him to go look for a snipe, and he finds this like wild, colorful bird, and he's like, I found one.
What is that thing?
It's a snipe.
There's no such thing as a snipe.
I love that idea of kind of birthing a myth too, right? I was in Nova Scotia recently. I've been working over there doing a ghost hunting show, of all things. When we were out in the bogs one night, like right out in this swampy area in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, one of my investigators and I were like, let's create a cryptid out here. Like, let's see if we can do this. And we did. We created Bog Squatch. And we started going around the town and asking people, you know, the locals at the bar, the waiter at the restaurant, have you ever seen the Bog Squatch? We had literally just made this thing up the day before. And we started having people be like, oh, we've heard stories. We have heard stories of the Bog Squatch. And
Wow.
I'm not kidding you guys. It got to the point where we put a couple like jokey articles online, and the International Cryptid Museum reached out to us and said, hey, do you have any information on the Bog Squatch? If you do, we'll put it in the museum. And that's when I really started looking at this whole cryptid thing as like, you know, is this something we're creating? Like a tulpa, almost. Are we able to think these things into existence through these stories that we tell and stuff like that? I love that idea.
I mean, if your branding is good enough, Bog Squatch is such a good name.
It really is.
That is a very, that's a hooky name.
I gotta trademark that.
Bog Squatch. Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh. I already want to subscribe to that newsletter.
I'll get on it. I'll get on it.
We just had this conversation with Kelly Chase about the co-creative nature or relationship that people can have with the mystery. And I think about the people who invented a ghost, where they got together and they said, let's just make one up. Let's make a person up. And they made him up, and they gave him a name, they gave him a life, and he started appearing in these seances that they had. Like, it became a thing. And was it Joshua Cutchins who was talking on Kelly's show on Cosmosis about, what is it, fourth wall phantoms, where writers of fiction have encountered their own characters, IRL. And so somebody might take a very blurry picture of a Bog Squatch.
Yeah.
You
Somebody
know,
might
if it gets out there. So,
it's popular enough.
In terms of weeping entities, give me, you know, Squonk over La Llorona any day. Because she's scary.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Squonk is something that I would be very happy to suggest into reality, because it apparently just inspires people to write nice songs and cute books about adventures, and then we're just like relating to a creature. I think that's what it's making me think of most, especially with what you were just saying, Ryan. That whatever is going on, it's about all of us and what's being communicated, because whether it's about reality being a lot more suggestible than we think, or it's just about us connecting over something that we want to be true, that we're all kind of searching and yearning for a bit more because we know there is more. Like, all of us know that there are more pages in this book and we need to keep turning them together. I think either way, something magical is going on. And I like that a lot.
My main takeaway from this segment is that Mal wants to manifest into existence a creature that hates itself so much it dissolves into tears. So I don't know.
I want it to exist. I'd be happy to meet a Squonk. I'd sit down and have a good cry with a Squonk.
The Somewhere in the Skies podcast is free to listen to every week, but if you would like to help support the show, we have a very active Patreon page where you give what you think the show is worth. In return, you'll get early access to the main show, bonus episodes, and priority to ask our guests your listener questions. Your support truly makes the show continue and grow. So, to learn more and to join, visit patreon.com/somewhereskies.
Let's move on to much unhappier topics. Which is the very unhappy intersection between, you know, the Defense Department and Congress and anomalous phenomenon. As we know, or as you should know, the House held a congressional hearing on Tuesday, September 9th, about unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is prosaically known as UFOs. And there were a number of witnesses and a number of quite compelling statements, and a video was submitted by Representative Eric Burleson, a Republican from Missouri. Now, it should be noted that according to Burlinson, the footage was presented as received from a whistleblower, and that, quote, an independent review is ongoing. But what that tells me is that there's no traceable or verifiable chain of custody. We just have a video that looks military. Shrug. Now, a contemporary article published by TWZ, or The War Zone, which is a pretty reputable Defense Department magazine, online magazine, gives a good bit of context. It was published the same day as the hearing, and I'd like to read excerpts from that piece. Quote, the footage shows the purported AGM-114, which is a missile fired, called a Hellfire missile, which was shot at this UAP, striking the object and causing some debris to go flying, then deflecting away without detonating. The object, which had been shown traveling along a steady path before the attempted intercept, is seen continuing on, despite being struck, until the clip ends. The video feed also prominently includes the text LRD, LASE, DES, which would point to one MQ-9 laser designating the target for the other Reaper to engage, which is a drone, with a laser-guided Hellfire variant. This is also known as buddy lasing. Now, what is known is that, everyone have their buddy. The Houthis in Yemen have been engaged in on-again, off-again attacks on ships in and around the Red Sea, as well as targets in Israel using ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as long-range kamikaze drones since October 2023. This video was taken off the coast of Yemen on October 30th, 2024. Prior to the announcement of a ceasefire between the Houthis and the U.S. government in May, American air and naval forces were very actively engaged in responding to those threats, as well as targeting the Iranian-backed militants in Yemen. MQ-9s were a fixture in those operations, with the Houthis claiming to have shot down dozens of them. American Reapers have been operating over and around Yemen in general for years now. The journalist George Knapp was a witness during this House hearing, and he responded to Representative Burlinson's request for a comment by claiming to have known about but never actually seen this particular video. And then he went on to say, quote, there's a whole bank of these kinds of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public has not been allowed to see. What the hell is that?
I think I have to rush in to say that I have listened to an interview between, we were actually just before we started recording, we were talking about the Andy McGrillen, the host of That UFO podcast, who had one of his listeners on who claimed to be a weapons expert, worked with these kinds of munitions a lot, and was very familiar with the type of footage that was being shown and the type of ballistic information you could see. And upon inspection was just not convinced that this was anomalous at all, that this looked like a fairly standard sort of test firing type situation where you're just trying to sort of see what the Hellfire missile might do in this type of circumstance against this type of object, etc. I have to say that even on my first couple of watches of that video, I didn't see anything super compelling either, mostly because I'm blind to it. There's not enough visual information there for me to hook onto to say one way or another what this thing is. It feels like a very obscure artifact to me. But listening to that interview with that guy, who we should say also wanted to be anonymous, and also emphatically not a debunker, somebody who thought that there are very compelling examples of UAP videos elsewhere, but that this doesn't seem like one of them to him.
I've spoken to George Knapp on several occasions prior to him and his partner, Jeremy Corbell, releasing a lot of these videos. I've been a colleague of Jeremy's for years now, so it's always interesting to get their perspective on these things before they go public. I can tell you right now, they had no idea this video was going to be shown at the hearing. So I think they were a little taken back at that as well. But I listened to that interview that Andy McGrillen did with the ammunitions expert, I believe it was, who is quite familiar with the Hellfire missile, the several types that they are. And the big thing a lot of people are arguing is it never exploded. The missile never, upon impact, did not explode. Exactly, Tom.
Right.
Now, that could be for many different reasons. To me, it seems like the impact was not great enough even that the missile would explode, or it just was not a Hellfire missile that does explode. There are ones that don't detonate either, from what I've been told. So for me, I hate to say this, but I do believe there is probably a prosaic explanation. My big question with every one of these videos is why? Why are we watching this? Why was this captured? And we don't know the why. to any of these videos. The Tic Tacs, the Go Fast, the Gimbal, this one, the Baghdad Phantom that came out, not too long ago. We don't have enough data to really look at it. And the minute that Burlinson said, this was sent to me anonymously with absolutely no information or metadata, I'm like, then why are we watching this?
Why are we watching it? Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's a double-edged sword, guys. Yeah. Like, for me, this video is being shown worldwide. It's on ABC News, CNN, Fox, like you name, insert mainstream media here across the world. This video is being shown. What's not being shown is the incredible testimony of the 4 witnesses that testified at this hearing. So that kind of disappoints me, to be honest.
Well, I mean, this is conjecture, obviously, but we've seen this play out this exact way so many times that it would be sort of a mistake not to apply Occam's razor and to say the likeliest explanation for why this video is being shown is as a distraction. Because the best thing you can do to get people to not pay attention to the thing that matters is show them something that's shinier and more exciting that matters actually less. And that if you can get everyone talking about this video and then eventually later on, and you don't even need to debunk it, but you could probably, if you wanted to, later on say, oh, we actually know what this is and it's not anomalous at all, then suddenly the whole entire thing, the air goes out of it and no one cares anymore. And nobody's watching the hearings and nobody's listening to the witnesses and nobody's, because it's like, oh, well, you already categorized that entire thing as having been debunked. So like it doesn't matter anymore. And we've seen that happen again and again and again and again. To me, that's the most likely explanation for why we're seeing this video is because if there hadn't been a video, then all we'd have to talk about would be the testimonies themselves, which are a lot more interesting.
But before we get to that, there were 2 things that struck me about the video. One, who says it's a UAP? It's moving, it has ballistic motion. It's not doing anything wackadoodle like turning 180 degrees on a dime. It's just gliding over the sea. But it was weird to me that the missile did not detonate. Maybe, okay, there are dummy missiles or whatever, practice, I don't know. Okay, fine. The 3 bits that come off the thing and stay with it, almost in a triangular or a delta form, is damned odd.
Yeah.
And so if it was a drone and something struck it with force and pieces flew off, you wouldn't see them. They certainly wouldn't continue tagging along. That just seemed very, very odd to me.
I had the same thought that if you were listening to me, that's when I was like, oh, because that to me. But then when nobody brought it up, I'm glad you said something just because I was like, well, maybe that's like a tracking, like something happening with the video and I just don't know how to look at this footage. But I thought the same thing. I was like, are 3 little drones popping out of this drone? And like 3 little baby. And,
we
debris. Often like people talk about orbs in 3s. They talk about craft in 3s all the time. And it actually looks like it could be 4, but it just doesn't. It looks very, very strange. Like something shook other, also flying on the same trajectory at the same speed, pieces loose. That's the thing that I thought was odd as well with my extremely layman's eyes,
Ryan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, the 3 orbs, I guess, as people are calling them, that broke off of the main object are very compelling. I have gone back so many times and watched that, and it does look like after it impacts that main craft that continues on, those 3 things almost lock into a triangular position and start following the object. That is very strange. Very strange. Anomalous, I don't know. But what could be even more compelling is, was it not a test of the missile, but a test of that object? Is that object the technology of the United States or some black budget program, Lockheed Martin, I don't know, something like that. And they're seeing, will the objects within the mothership, I guess, continue on if something were to happen?
Can it create some kind of field some kind of containment field or whatever? Here's where I'm coming from with this. We've spent so much time, we being a kind of a collective, waiting for, big D disclosure. But big D disclosure is almost certainly not going to happen. Why? Because what this really is about and has been about for almost 100 years now, for crying out loud, 80 years, is the Defense Department. So, if something is disclosed, it's going to be how shitty we've been with the CIA. It's going to be how terrible we've been in competition to create weapons of war, to weaponize maybe off-world or technology created by non-human intelligences. The last thing it's going to be is some kind of list of those intelligences or what they actually want or need, because every time we're getting these videos or this kind of stuff involved, it's about these craft appearing in war zones or over sensitive areas, infrastructure, missile silos. That's all Defense Department stuff. Their posture to it is one of fear. Can it kill us? Can we kill it? Most people don't feel that way. And so I had learned a wonderful word recently, and it's called consilience. And consilience is an agreement between approaches to a topic of different academic subjects, especially science and the humanities. So the consilience here is not just spooky videos of Tic Tacs or whatever, or stuff that comes out in dribs and drabs for some reason, right? But like the other end of it, and we talked about this with Kelly, are eyewitness reports, right? And that is an entire body of data that not only adds to and complements what we already know from other sort of lines of inquiry, but actually is in many ways like reinforcing of certain truths that we can extract from this. And the reason I bring up consilience is what Ryan was talking about at the beginning when he was 12 and he saw this triangular craft, which, by the way, I think those things have names. I mean, those things are seen so common. And I wanted to tell a personal anecdote. When I was around the same time, I was on the road with my band, and we stop somewhere on the road, and I pick up USA Today, and there's a picture of a freaking flying triangle over Phoenix in 1997, and I'm like, what in God's name? Like, literally, they're like, here's a UFO, everybody saw it. Here's a picture of the Phoenix Light, what they call the Phoenix Lights, before they were very lamely tried to be explained away with flares or something silly. And Ryan, I know you wanted to talk more about that as it pertains to this congressional hearing.
Sure. And I'm happy you brought up Kelly Chase, because her work with witness testimony echoes the work that I do in the UFO field as well. And we did hear some really good testimony at the UAP hearing, but like you said, Tom, all of it was military-based. And, that's fine. Like, that boosts the credibility in a lot of people's minds when it's trained observers seeing things that they cannot identify. I get it. One of those witnesses was a gentleman named Dylan Borland, who testified, former Air Force, worked for geospatial intelligence as well. This guy was very smart. He knew not just what was in lower Earth orbit, but high Earth orbit as well, and witnessed one of these triangles that we'd mentioned, and had an extremely profound experience in witnessing this over Langley Air Force Base.
And as I began walking towards the light, towards the flight line and the track, the light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light, and then it was a triangle. It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze, dead. I remember how thick it was. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner, and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. But what was really odd was the outside. The best way to describe it is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft. I'm under this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion, and I immediately feel static electricity all over my body, and then I smell the smell of after a thunderstorm or lightning storm.
He was very affected by that event. You can tell. He's petrified to be testifying before Congress because of the reprisals that could come with something like that. The stigma is shedding within the military community when it comes to reporting these things. But outside of the military, it's still hard for people to come forward and report these things. And like me, at age 12, I didn't talk about seeing that thing for decades. Because the minute I told my friends, they started making fun of me. Or the minute I brought it up at a family birthday party, they're like, uh-oh, like Ryan's the crazy one in the family now. So it's hard. But the reason I bring that up is I think it's very important, Tom, like you mentioned, for every military UFO witness, there's 1,000 people around the world having these experiences. And that data is not being accounted for when it comes to the quote-unquote government trying to explain these things. They don't care what Sue saw in Michigan or what, Pat saw in Detroit or whatever. Wow, those are two very close places. I could have done much better than that, but you get the gist.
I live in Michigan and Detroit. I don't know.
It's forgot how the United States. Yeah.
That brings me to my question, though. Am I correct in thinking or remembering that these very large triangular craft have been witnessed hundreds and hundreds of times?
Yeah. They are probably one of the most commonly reported UFOs, yes. I mean, I have several in both of my books, actually. Probably a majority of them are these black triangles. And whatever they are, they're being witnessed both by military people at military installations and by the public all around the world. Phoenix Lights is probably one of the biggest mass UFO sightings to have occurred, with a boomerang-shaped craft. Some saw a V-shape or triangle. And then there's several cases in my books that just completely blew me away when it comes to this stuff. And I think those people need to be heard too, not just these military people.
This is what we bang on about constantly, which is data aggregation, which is like, take everybody's witness statement, judge no one, look at the patterns that emerge, discard the outliers, whatever it is. And the thing that's so mind-blowing, particularly about this craft, your experience, I think is his name, Borland, that gentleman's experience, that witness's experience, is that these things are not in a hurry. They don't care that they're seen. They sort of glide along almost leisurely, completely silent. The Phoenix Lights were wanton. They just floated along down the valley, and everyone's out there taking pictures and shooting videos. And so my question to you is, and of course it's speculative, are they ours? Ultimately, is this like some product of whatever, Lockheed Martin reverse engineering, something? Or why are people getting so freaked out when they float over military sites? What's going on?
So I recently spoke to David Marler. He's the head of the National UFO Historical Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They are the repository for all UFO documents, QFOS, MUFON, every UFO investigation that has ever been done. All the files, mostly all the files, have been donated to this gentleman, David Marler, and they're all located at one place now where you can go visit and research these things.
Including Blue Book and stuff like that, or not?
Yes, including Blue Book files as well. Yes, and I was talking to Dave, and I asked him that very question, like, what is going on? It's like Seinfeld. What's going on with the triangles? He told me the most commonly reported UFO and the one UFO that wants to be seen. And that gave me chills thinking about that. Whatever the triangles are, they want to be seen. Why? I don't quite know. But they seem to have a lasting effect on people more than other UFOs, too, I've noticed. There's one case in particular in Michigan that I investigated personally with a mother and a daughter. And they both saw one of these triangles above their home over Lake Michigan. And what's weird about this is they both were staring at the same triangle. And the mom turns to the daughter and she's like, "Oh my God, it's so amazing. It's silent. It's burning white. It's beautiful. I feel so good, so euphoric. Like, are you feeling that?" And she looks over at her daughter, and her daughter is on the ground in the fetal position, covering her ears. And she's like, "It's so loud. It's so loud." And she said, It's so black. It's evil. It's evil. So I just, that just blew my mind when they told me that. I sat down with the mother and the daughter, and to hear them have a completely different experience.
Can I ask,
looking
how
at
old
the
was
same
the daughter?
thing. The daughter at the time was, I want to say, 14 or 15.
Okay, so she wasn't a little kid.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just crazy, man. They had completely different perceptions looking at the same exact thing. And then on the flip side of that, another guy I interviewed back in 1974, that case, the Michigan one, 2006, I'm like, okay, yeah. But then back in 1974, a gentleman saw the same exact craft over a drive-in movie theater that hundreds of people we're looking up at.
It's so often the case with these things. They're so heavily corroborated, which is wonderful, unless you're in the fetal position having a big freak out. Are any of that particular craft associated with abduction experiencers?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Now,
okay.
Yeah, they have, which bothers me because a part of me wanted to believe that the triangles were human tech, complete human tech, and that's it. Stealth bombers. I mean, my sighting in 95, I'm like, totally could have been a test of a stealth bomber or something. But when I'm hearing that these triangles were being witnessed back in the 70s and even earlier, David Marler has cases from the 30s, the 40s, these triangles were being witnessed. Yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to abductions, I have had reports come to me where people said that it was a triangle that took them or they saw before they had some sort of experience of something being taken or going aboard a craft or whatnot. You know, I don't know. I can't pretend to know what that means. But yeah, the triangles are one of the most baffling things I've come across. And maybe that's because I have a bias when having had seen one myself. But yeah.
I remember watching Borland's testimony, and he said it was 2 stories high. And I'm like,
yeah.
Christ, what would that... Does that conform to your sighting? That size, that scale?
To an extent. What my father and I saw was very big. It took up a huge portion of the sky. Now, the problem is, you know, obviously I was 12, memory's faulty. I just don't know. But to me, it seemed very large just by the amount of sky that it seemed to black out behind it.
And this is common, too, that it just blacks out the sky.
He also mentioned, too, he had like physiological effects, Borland, that like an electricity seemed to be surging through him when he witnessed that craft at Langley. I do feel that I had some of that when I saw the triangle, that I felt like this like vibration almost going through my body. Could have been adrenaline, fear, I don't know. But I that resonated with me when he said that he could almost smell like this ozone smell when the craft was above him and he felt these like electrical surges going through him. That like subconsciously hit me in a weird way. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
What happened with your dad? Did your dad ever talk about it? And do you talk about it still?
Yeah. So my father never spoke of that night until 2017 when that New York Times article came out. It's crazy. Even with all the UFO work I've done throughout the years. I mean, he's come to see me give a couple of talks here and there and been like, yeah, good job. Still, you know, I don't know. But he refused to talk about it. And then in 2017, when that New York Times article hit and UFOs basically kind of were all over the news, I had traveled home to Syracuse to visit my family, and we went out to a bar. And I just remember, unprompted, mind you, he just out of the blue was like, you remember that thing we saw? I'm like, do I remember that thing we saw, Dad? Yeah, look at what I'm doing with my life. I think I remember. Yeah. Do you see me playing for the Yankees? No, I'm a ufologist. And we talked for hours at that bar about that night, about everything going on in the UFO world. And look, if that's what it's going to take for him to finally embrace that something truly anomalous or unexplainable happened to us, awesome. Like, everyone works on their own time when it comes to these profound experiences. It changed my life that night, but I think it took him a little while to realize these things were actually happening and that we were not alone.
What he needed was a permission structure, right? So he's not going to say a damn thing about it until the gray lady comes out, you know, the paper of record comes out and goes, hi, they're real. And then he's like, oh, okay, I can do this now. I can talk about it. But like, as we all know, experiencers have been ridiculed and dismissed for decade after decade after decade, including active suppression by our own government of like, no, it was Venus, and by the way, you're crazy. And what we are primarily concerned with, apart from really wonderful stories that spook you out a little bit, is the community aspect of it and the strategies that the individual can take in terms of kind of getting over the ontological shock and feeling that they can share the stories and connect with other people regarding these kinds of experiences. For me, at least, that is what's primarily important. I don't care what the Department of Defense does or does not do with this, as much as I care about what human beings are able to glean from it and how they can handle it emotionally, where they are more integrated people.
I feel very much the same way, and I've been really impressed with your patience, and your overall, like, talking with you feels enriching and positive to me, Ryan. And I'm curious about how you cultivate that attitude when it feels like so much in this space feels either genuinely scary or extremely defeating. Like, what motivates you, and what would you recommend to those who might be feeling some ontological shock or overwhelm in the face of what looks like apparently something massive is going on, but I feel kind of gaslit always. So
yeah. Number one rule, and I've talked to Kelly about this on several occasions. I think her and I have been on a similar journey in the UFO world in terms of getting an inside look at the intelligence apparatus and their kind of intrusion into this topic, and how they can use that to their advantage and use us to their advantage as well. When you have former intelligence people coming out and saying they ran UFO programs and, hey, I know the truth, I'll give you little breadcrumbs here and there. My suggestion to anyone looking into this topic is do not listen to anyone else but yourself. Take what other people say and come to your own conclusions, because nobody has the answers to any of this stuff. The United States government has absolutely no idea what is going on when it comes to UFOs. In my personal opinion, I could be completely wrong, but at least from what I've seen from both the inside and the outside, they have no idea what UFOs are. But they can control the narrative, and that could be very disheartening, and it's made me want to quit looking into this topic, because I've been promised certain things, and I've been promised the answers, and they never, ever come. And I don't think they're ever going to come from the government, whatever the hell that means. Like, what is that? What does disclosure even mean?
Right.
Every person who's, what would it look like? Exactly, Mallory. Like, have your own disclosure.
It's a rainbow.
It's a rainbow.
Go ahead and try to chase it. You know, it's like it exists. Technically, it exists, but you're never going to find it. It's an apparition. It's something that exists as a sort of phantom. And even the idea of what the government even is. And I think the older that I've gotten, and I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore, you realize, the government is not the government. The government is not one thing. The government is a massive conglomeration of interconnected organizations that are all with all kinds of different incentives and ideas and objectives. And to ascribe an action to the government it's meaningless. It's meaningless. It's like, well, who are you talking about? And what are you talking about? And so when it comes to disclosure, capital D disclosure, it's a rainbow. It doesn't exist. It's an emergent sort of illusion from the misunderstanding of what the government is and what it's for and how it works.
Representative Burlenson's preface to showing that video was to complain bitterly about how he's been gaslit and they can't get a hold of all the stuff they've been asking for and blah, blah, blah. Big D disclosure, it ain't coming. And it's not going to come from that kind of hierarchy. But it's not a consolation prize to say literally that we have the truth ourselves. The community of people and experiencers are the ones who have, one, a completely different posture toward this phenomenon than somebody who's worried about whether it will blow them up or they can blow it up. And they're in some kind of like war with whatever, China or Russia. Most of us don't feel that way at all. You know, so experiencers have these stories to tell, and all we do is just listen and bear witness, and truths will emerge that are immediately available to us. Once people feel like your dad feels like, okay, I can talk about this, and you talk for hours, there is understanding available there.
And everyone has their own disclosure at whatever point in their life they're going to have it. Everyone's seen something weird or experienced something they just cannot readily explain, whether it's a ghost, a UFO, Bigfoot, like you name it. That's a disclosure. It doesn't have to be a UFO or an alien. It's just something that changes what you once thought. And I think that's what life is all about. It's just like adapting to the next mystery. And I love that. I love chasing the mystery. I love chasing that rainbow. And I do look at it as a rainbow. That's why I don't get disheartening, Mallory. That's why I don't give up, because every person who comes to me with their story inspires me to keep looking for the answers but never expecting them. I don't care. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I don't give a shit what UFOs are or aren't at the end of the day. I've made some of my best friends through this topic, whether they're artists, musicians, scientists, academics. This topic challenges you. It makes you think. It makes you learn. That's what I love about it. Is the government ever going to tell us the truth about what crashed in Roswell? Probably not. That'd be pretty cool. But I'll tell you this, if they gave us the answers to all these UFO mysteries, we probably, A, wouldn't believe them because they've been covering it up for so long, whatever they do know. And B, we probably won't like those answers. So I love just living in the mystery and imagining what it could be.
I think maybe one of the other healthy and optimistic ways to look at the government, quote unquote, relationship with disclosure is that it's one set of stories. It's one set of experiences. And it's going through a filter of chaos and subversion and psyops and gaslighting and infighting and all kinds of stuff. It really is like watching a circus. And it's not to say that nothing in the circus matters, but it certainly isn't the only thing that matters. I love that there are hearings. I love that they're going on. They have gone on. They're still going on. I want them to continue going on, not because I think that I personally or the people that I care about are going to get all the answers we want from them, but because it's one of the important sets of stories that's going on. But there are so many other great and important stories, way more important stories, frankly, to me, than whatever is happening in Congress. I like Eric Burleson. I like this guy. I like watching him go through this experience. I don't consider him the government, but he is part of the government. So he is one of the people in the government circus that is going through this experience, and we get to watch some of that happen, and that's fun and cool, but it's not the answer with a capital A, and it's never going to be.
The big takeaway for me is that Ryan Sprague is a fellow traveler and friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Ryan,
I love that.
You're magical. Really, I can't even tell you how many notes I took as you were talking. And I grew up very religious. And the way you talk is shockingly similar to where I've landed when it comes to spirituality in many ways, which is that truth claims and certainty actually ruin everything about faith, spirituality, connecting to others. And there's something about uncertainty. And I think the way you phrased it was living in the mystery, which, amen, brother.
Amen.
There's something about uncertainty that unlocks the best in humans. It unlocks our faith and our hopefulness. You can't be hopeful with certainty. You can't, because you know what's going to happen. And so we're forced into a place of beauty, and man, you live there full time. So thank you for sharing that with us.
And thanks for coming on, man. You're hail fellow, well met. Seriously.
No, I love having conversations like this, and it's so refreshing to not talk all the government stuff all the time, because like you guys said, it's a tiny portion of what's going on in this conversation. So you guys are doing fantastic work, and like I said, anytime I would absolutely love to continue traveling.
Oh, he said it. He said it.
Yeah, all right. You're not getting out of it now, man.
It's on the record. It is on the record.
Spectre Vision Radio.